Hey everyone, welcome back to L2 Games and to episode 4 of the L2 Games Podcast. Sorry we've been away for a while. Things are getting kind of busy with school and everything and just life in general, so haven't been able to put out as much as I was hoping to, but we're back and I am joined again today by my friend Kyle. Kyle, how are you
What's
doing?
up? I'm good. How are you?
Good. So, Marvel's Avengers is making headlines again today. And it's not for a good reason. But of course, with this game, I haven't really come to expect anything more. But,
No.
one of the great things about live service games is that there's always something to talk about with them. Just unfortunately, in Avengers' case, it's never something good.
No. And it's a shame too because they did have some mild good press in the last couple days wherein they had a huge player boost after going to Xbox Game Pass.
Yep.
And you'd think that would be, some good news for Marvel's Avengers and Marvel's Avengers fans, but it was quickly outweighed by worse news.
Yep. So, for anyone who hasn't already heard, Crystal Dynamics went and shot themselves in the foot today. So, recently they made the mind-boggling decision to add paid XP boosts to Marvel's Avengers. So for 500 credits, you can get a week-long 1.5 times XP boost for your character. And there's a couple other packs. I think there's like a 3-day one and a 2-hour one.
Mhm.
But oh my God, are you serious? I don't understand at this point what they're doing
No.
with this game. And like I understand having something like an XP boost but to pay for it?
Yeah. Especially, it's especially bad because they had the XP rate reduced. I think it was a couple weeks or a month ago. So it was already harder to get for the grind. And I have to believe they did that just so people would spend longer in the game to try and grind up to power level 150 and level 50 and everything. But now it's just becoming more clear that they wanted to do that so that they could implement these consumables and then eventually make them uh, purchasable items, which is just horrible.
Well, and that's the thing. I think people would be a lot less upset with Crystal Dynamics if XP boosts had been a thing from the beginning. But
Hmm.
a couple months back, they had to go and announce that they were nerfing the rate that players were gaining XP at.
Hmm.
And now, after that, they're implementing this paid system. And their whole justification for nerfing XP in the first place was just total bogus from the beginning. They said, uh, from what I remember, they said that they wanted to slow the rate people were getting XP at because players were overwhelmed and confused with how quickly they were leveling up.
Yeah,
What?
no, that's bullshit.
There, there's nothing overwhelming and confusing about leveling up quickly in a game. If
No.
anything, I enjoy leveling up at a quick pace because it
Yeah.
makes me feel like my character is getting stronger really quickly, and that's cool.
Hmm.
If anything, people were confused and overwhelmed by the fact that there were two leveling systems in the game with both
Yeah.
your hero level and your power level from your gear. But it
Hmm.
had absolutely nothing to do with how quickly people were leveling up. And don't
No.
tell me otherwise, because it's such total BS at this point.
Yeah, and if that's the concern, then you need to make it clearer what people need to do when they do level up. Because if people are getting confused because of the different mechanics that you get from powering up and leveling up, then it's on you to maybe make it clearer and not slow the process so they have more time to figure it out on their own. Like,
Yeah, that speaks to
yeah,
more
this is
confusion
bullshit
about
excuse.
about the mechanics and the
Yeah.
UI than it does about the rate that people are getting XP at.
Hmm.
So now to go and introduce a pay to win mechanic essentially in the game
Yeah.
has really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And I can totally see the justification. And look, when they announced the well, they didn't announce the game, but when they did their whole E3 2019 gameplay reveal,
Hmm.
they said at that time that the game would have microtransactions, but that it would be solely cosmetic.
Yeah. They explicitly said no pay to win like gameplay
Hmm.
mechanics. So like now to kind of go back on it, it makes them look really bad. Like their trajectory has already been downward since the game launched. Like they didn't launch in a strong on strong feet, and then they've been trying and trying and trying to build the trust back and the support back, and like you have your core fans that have been like holding on because they want this game to be good and they know this game has potential, and yet like this late into the game's life, you're implementing this sort of mechanic that is just going to make your core fans even angrier, especially at a time when they had a boost in player activity. Like that also seems a little suspicious. How right when they get a boost in player activity from going free on Xbox Game Pass, they implement these pay to win mechanics.
Oh,
Like
and I
what?
think that was totally intentional on their part. Because with such an influx of new players, obviously there's going to be at least some incentive for those players to want to level up quickly and think that
Yeah.
they need to catch up to other players. And those
Yeah.
players, being as new to the game, won't realize how easy it actually is to level up your character. And so they're going to fall into this trap of spending money on the game. And
Yeah.
once they've sort of broken through that ceiling of spending money on the game, it becomes easier and easier every subsequent time they want to go and buy credits from the store. Especially if you
Yeah.
buy like a credits pack and you have a bunch left over and you're like, oh, I've almost got enough for a skin, but I just need a little more, so I'm going to keep
Yeah.
spending. And so
Well,
it
and I
just,
think you get a little bit of credits during the playthrough or just like at the start. And so when people get their little bit of credits, they might early on think, well, I don't know what these do, so maybe I'll just buy this XP boost so I can get up to level faster. And then later on, they're like, oh, I want some cosmetics items. I want an MCU skin. Well, now I don't have the credits anymore, so now I got to go pay real money to go and purchase these items. It's just, yeah, it's just shitty.
well, and it's not even that big of an XP boost. It's 1.5
No.
times XP. Like that's absolutely nothing. 1.5 times the XP for $5 for a
Yeah.
week. That's just it's a temporary thing to, which is so asinine to me. And sure, you can make the argument that it isn't necessarily a pay to win mechanic because it's a PvE game, but
Yeah.
then
No.
what is a pay to win in a PvE game, right? Like this is as
Yeah.
close as it gets to pay to win when you're paying to improve your character without actually doing the work that it otherwise requires. And so they absolutely did go back on their word what when they said in 2019 that they weren't going to have pay to win microtransactions.
Yeah.
And like it's just so insulting to everyone who took them at their word for that.
Yeah.
And like you said, this game is already struggling to maintain a player base. So most of the people that are left are the core fan base who have been playing since day one and really dedicated themselves to the game.
Yep.
And to go and slap players in the face like that is just not the move when your game is hanging on by a thread. And
No.
I mean, to be fair, like most of the players who've been playing that long, all their characters will be max level already, so it doesn't affect them as
Hmm.
much. But it is nice to see that those players are standing up for the community of new players because there are still players coming in, especially with this
Yep.
being added to Xbox Game Pass. And the players who've been playing this long enough know that this is a total cash grab, and it just reeks of desperation on Crystal Dynamics' part. And
Hmm.
that to me is what bugs me the most about this. Clearly, if you have to not only implement a pay to win mechanic this late in the game, but to do so in a manner where, one, they're going back on a promise they made before the game released and something that they really pushed in their marketing that there would be no pay to win, and
Yep.
two, doing something that in order to make it happen, they had to create an artificial need, And I don't even want to say a need necessarily because you don't need the XP boost, but
No.
they created an artificial justification for XP boosts by nerfing the rate players gain XP at. That to
Yeah.
me is just so desperate for money
Yeah.
and so cash grabby, and it shows a real lack of integrity on their part.
Yeah. And like like in a way you kind of have to feel bad for some of the developers that are taking the heat for this because this doesn't feel like a decision that the developers that are like putting their blood, sweat, and tears into this game to make it like run smoothly and that we have cool quality content in there. Like this doesn't seem like a decision they would make. I think this is coming from higher up in Crystal Dynamics or maybe even from like the Marvel side. But like yeah, it's just bad to see. And to me, this was like this really discouraged me from even going back. Like from our last conversation about Marvel's Avengers, we like were talking about War for Wakanda, and usually with these new characters, I would at least go through, redeem the battle pass, and then check in daily to try and complete my challenges and get the full use of the battle pass. I haven't done that for Black Panther. And I can't actually see myself doing that. And even a character like Spider-Man coming in, whenever, like they haven't even said when. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if within the next few weeks we get some sort of word on that because maybe they're trying to cover this up a little bit. But I can't see myself coming back to this game not only on the fact that the gameplay is just not as fulfilling anymore, but also on the fact that I don't really want to support what this game is doing anymore because of these sort of like going back on their promises and these predatory attempts at like just getting people's cash. It's just not, it doesn't feel worth my time anymore.
No, absolutely. They're absolutely gouging new players, and it's frustrating to see because if they're that desperate for money, you would think that maybe they would revisit their pricing model for skins. That is
Mhm.
my biggest frustration with this. They're introducing a pay to win mechanic when their pricing model for their skins is so ludicrous. Because you look at it and they've tried to adopt a Fortnite esque pricing model. If you
Yeah.
look at it, the prices are very similar to skins for Fortnite. The difference is games like Fortnite and Apex and Warzone, those are all free to play from the beginning. I
Yep.
spent $80 on this game. So don't be trying to gouge me for an extra 20 for every skin I want to get.
Yeah.
That is going too far. If you need an influx of cash that badly to keep this game going, that you felt the need to introduce a pay to win XP boost mechanic, maybe you should reconsider the price points that you're selling skins for because
Yep.
you cut the skin prices in half. Sure, you need to double your sales to make the same amount of money, but I'm pretty sure you'd more than double your sales
Yep.
if you cut the price in half. I would be a lot more willing to buy an MCU skin in this game if it didn't cost me $20 every time.
Yeah.
And like the other thing with that too is that skins are a pure profit product for them.
Mhm.
Aside from the time and resources it takes to put into making the skin, which for the vast majority of skins in this game, I would say is like a few minutes at best because let's be honest, they're just recolors. They aren't doing anything special to make these skins unique. They're just slapped a
Yeah.
new coat of paint on it. So I'm sure that doesn't take more than a few minutes. It is pure profit. It's not like they run out of stock on character skins,
No.
right? As soon as that's on the store, that is available forever for them to
Yeah.
buy. So there's no justification. They don't need to mark up their product to recoup development costs because they're not
No.
making anything new.
Well, and the struggle is too is like I don't want to buy a skin, even those like MCU skins that I really like that Iron Man 1 skin. I really like that skin. And I would want that skin if I was going to play this game. And I just like because of everything within the game and now these new like pay to win mechanics, I don't want to play the game, and so I'm not going to buy the skin. Because why would I buy a skin if it doesn't like if I'm not even going to use it, right? Like it's
Hmm.
just to look at for a little bit and then what? Put the game aside or maybe even like delete the download. Like I it just doesn't make sense to me. And so I think like well yeah, like if it was a more reasonable price, I might be willing to p do that purchase because I might play it at some point in the future. I just don't think that it is that worth buying at this point with the state of this game. And
No,
I don't know if it
absolutely.
ever will get to that point now.
And that's one of the disappointing parts about this whole problem that they've introduced into the game is that they're introducing a mechanic where you're paying for XP when they could have spent the time and resources they took to implement that and used it to work on adding some actual end game content to a game that is very content dry.
Yeah,
1 2 hour expansion every 3 or 4 months just isn't going to cut it for a live service game like this.
no,
And they're just shooting themselves in the foot over and over again at this point. And
yeah,
if there was more content to play, yeah, sure, I would be willing to spend more money. But now that you go and insult your core player base by introducing something like this, and you refuse to add more meaningful content, it just feels like a very tone deaf thing to do at this point.
yeah.
It
I
is,
think this is the start of the end for
yeah,
them. Like I think like Black Panther was one of the like it was kind of a small sign that especially after when they didn't announce anything coming after Black Panther, I was like a little suspicious as to what was happening with this game because they wanted it to have like a significant life. Like there was data mines of other characters, even voice lines recorded already for other upcoming characters
well, yeah, they
that
had a
I
huge
don't think we're gonna
roster.
get.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
War Machine, Doctor Strange,
yeah,
Scarlet
She-Hulk,
Witch,
like, yep,
She-Hulk, Winter
Bucky
Soldier,
Barnes, yeah,
and now it's a question of is Spider-Man going to be the last one? Because after Spider-Man, there's nothing left on their roadmap. And
no,
the way this game is going downhill as quickly as it is, I
I
just
don't think we're gonna get it.
no, I feel
I
like they're
don't think
going to
so.
give up after this,
Yeah,
which is
and I
unfortunate to
think,
see. Like going back to our
yeah,
last conversation, we want to see this game do well because it's the
hmm,
Avengers. Everybody loves the Avengers. But
yeah,
when you keep insulting fans of the IP like this and doing lazy, half-assed cash grab attempts, it really sours people.
yeah. Yeah, it's a half-assed attempt, and it is one of, if not the biggest IP in media right now, and they fucked it. Like
Yeah,
straight up, they
it,
fucked it.
you would have to like. I thought when this game was announced, like there are only so many ways you could fuck up the Avengers right
Hmm.
now, and they found a way.
Yeah.
They found a way to do it.
Well, and
It's
I've had a hard time getting excited about anything to come too. Like, there was like that PlayStation presentation recently with
mhm,
like trailers for Spider-Man 2 and the Wolverine game coming from God, what's the company?
Insomniac.
Insomniac.
Yeah.
And like those got me excited because I have faith that they will be faithful adaptations of like Wolverine and like obviously the Spider-Man games have been great. But like if Crystal
Insomniac.
Dynamics was to come out with like another game, like if they were to take on like the X-Men or something as like like a team game in the similar vein of Avengers, I wouldn't be excited because I couldn't like this game has been such a disappointment and it's
Mhm.
never picked up its boots and found its footing. But yeah,
Yeah, with Insomniac's Spider-Man, I was happy to buy the season pass and pay for the DLC in that game because they
yeah,
created hands down the best Spider-Man story ever. And I
yes,
I was so they did such a great job with it. They paid respect to the source material, they stayed true to the character, but they also made a great game and they didn't gouge
yep,
people on cosmetics.
no,
Avengers, sure, it has decent combat gameplay and a good story, but the core focus of their game is the end game multiplayer, and
yeah,
there's so much to be desired there that when you go and pool your resources into implementing pay to win XP boosts, it really feels like a slap in the face. And going back to our last episode talking about Avengers, one of the things I said was that it sort of feels like they're listening to fans on a very superficial level, but at the end
Yeah.
of the day, they don't really care about the consumer. And this, I feel like, just doubled down on that,
Yep.
where they're listening to fans, but only when it's something that will bring them in a lot of money. For example, the MCU skins, people were clamoring for that
Yeah.
since the game's launch, and eventually they caved and did it. But of course, it came with the caveat that they're selling them at a ludicrous price, and
Yep.
so they're willing to listen when it's going to bring them in money. If it's not going to give them money, then they clearly don't
Forget
seem to
it.
care about the player base,
Yeah.
and
And
it's disappointing to
they,
see.
yeah, like if they had, it might be a different story if the framing was different. You know, like if the expectations were set differently, because like Spider-Man DLC was paid,
Hmm.
and if I, I honestly think if they made each character DLC like a paid thing, first of all, they would probably have more content behind it because they will actually be getting income from it, and they wouldn't be so predatory with their pricing and with these new pay-to-win mechanics
Hmm.
because they know that people will pay for new characters, new locations, new enemies, new story content, um, and that sort of thing. But because they said that this is a live service game with free additional characters, I think we're just going to get to Spider-Man and then that'll be it because they're not bringing in the money from their other avenues because they've priced them all wrong, and nobody wants to play the game in the state it is in anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, that was their big mistake from the beginning, and
Hmm.
they wanted to adopt what I would call the Fortnite model, where
Yeah.
there are regular content updates that are free, and then they gouge people on skins. But again, Fortnite is not only free to play, but it has a
Yeah.
more satisfying gameplay loop. Competitive multiplayer games don't get stale the same way that a game like this does, that a PvE game does, because in PvE games, obviously the missions are unfolding the same way every time. In a
Yeah.
competitive multiplayer game, every match is going to be different because you're coming up against other players who can outthink and outmaneuver you at any given time. And so to try and replicate the success of games like the Battle Royale games in what is essentially a single player game with optional co-op
Yeah.
is just it was just such a huge mistake from the beginning.
Yep. I agree.
But anyway,
Well,
I
yeah.
I think this is probably the final nail in the coffin for Avengers. I really
Yeah.
do think that because they've really slapped the faces of new incoming players and their core fan base all at the same time
Yeah.
without having any additional content soon, especially for Xbox and PC players who aren't going to receive any new characters for a minimum of like 6 months from now,
Yeah. If they do.
if they do.
If they
Yeah,
even do get anyone past Black Panther, which
yeah.
is it's looking more and more unlikely. And so I don't know, like I'm gonna keep an eye on like what their response is, if they have any. I think if they don't have a response to the fan outrage for this decision, then it's gonna be pretty telling that there's going to be nothing done about this and it's going to continue to go down this way, and you can probably remove Avengers from your uh, like PlayStation or Xbox or whatever if you're not going to play it, because I don't think there's going to be much else after what we've already gotten. So
Nope, I don't think so either.
no.
But I'm interested to keep an eye on the situation and see how things develop. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like this is something they're going to have to come out and address in the next couple of days. If not, that's I think that spells it out for you. I think that's
Yeah.
the end if they don't address this.
Mm.
But anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you everyone for
Yeah.
tuning in and listening. Let us know in the comments what you think. Do you think this is the end for Marvel's Avengers? Do you feel like you're being gouged? And is this a game you're going to continue to play and support? Let us know. All
But
right,
thanks for
see you
having me
later,
back,
guys.
Nick. It was good.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Thank you for coming back. It's always fun to discuss this game,
In a
and
very depressed manner.
yeah, and it's constant.
Disappointment.
Yeah,
It's like we're not I mean, I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just disappointed.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. All right, see you
Avengers in a
later,
whole.
guys.
See you.